Hello, we're back and now it's time for our third and final session. We're going to talk about expense control, but also about the role that independent fleet management plays in cooperative operations. And to discuss this topic, joining me are Osnil and Nick. Osnil Bruschi is the head of LATAM, or head of Latin America, for Fleets International Enterprises. Hello, Osnil. How are you?
Hello, Daniel. I'm good. Thank you for the opportunity.
Good to see you. And also with us is Nikolai Shalaev. He is the country manager for Traxall Brazil. Hello, Nick.
Hello, how are you? Thank God. I'm very grateful for this opportunity.
Both of their companies are multinational fleet management firms headquartered in Europe and now expanding in Brazil and, actually, throughout Latin America. They are known as independent fleet management companies. But I'll let them explain a little more. Osnil, can you tell us a little about the company?
Of course. Well, I represent Fleets International, a German fleet management company that has been operating in Europe for about 20 years and is present in 28 countries. We started operations in Latin America in 2020. I've been here since the beginning of the operation, and our challenge was a client who operated in 8 countries, and we carried out the implementation of this project, which was basically an extension of a contract with one of our clients in Europe. And that's how the company, was established here in Latin America. Today, we have offices in Sao Paulo and Mexico City, but we also serve 9 countries remotely.
And what about you, Nick?
I represent Traxall. Traxall is a global company. At the moment, we're operating in more than 30 countries, mainly in Europe, but also in Latin America, with a physical presence in Mexico, Colombia, Chile, Argentina, Ecuador, Peru, and also in Brazil since 2018. We're in Sao Paulo, and now, as of today, the number of vehicles currently overseen and managed by Traxall globally is around 500,000 vehicles in total. This happened after. Last year, we acquired a company called Fleet Logistics. We're in the acquisition phase, and now we're a global company, both in Latin America and Europe, managing that number of vehicles.
Okay, very good. There are 2 companies here in Latin America operating, and let's start with the questions. Osnil, I know your company is independent, but that said, you're still involved with vehicle recommendations, right?
Yes, absolutely. Our involvement with vehicle recommendations is total. We work, with several areas of our client, right? But when it comes to purchasing, basically, there's a very strong involvement with the purchasing department, right? Because once the department confirms the budget for vehicle acquisition, it's our job to go to the market, check the availability of vehicles, after-sales service, prepare a TCO study with the fleet's characteristics, and then come back to the client with the available model options. Basically, that's our job, right? We also have cases where, of course, I didn't go into details about the company, I'm talking a bit more about leased fleets, right? We also manage owned fleets, In some countries, but here in Brazil, our work has been very focused on leased fleets. And in this case, we also offer the full range of end-to-end fleet management services for our clients. So, when it comes to vehicle recommendations, our involvement is total.
Okay. I have a question for Nick. Nick, what do you think, or which do you think is more cost efficient? Working with multiple suppliers or maybe sticking with a preferred supplier? And why?
Yeah, so we're talking about the leased fleet, right? The outsourced fleet. In that sense, I think it depends on the fleet profile and, actually, on the company's goals. In many cases, I think centralizing with a preferred supplier can bring economies of scale, better commercial terms, and, above all, simpler management. On the other hand, working with multiple suppliers can offer more flexibility and price competitiveness, especially in regions with logistical or operational differences. And at Traxall, we help our clients find the ideal balance between standardization and total efficiency, always based on data, benchmarks, and each client's strategic objectives.
And I think it depends. Yeah, it depends on the client too, right? I have a question for both of you. Let me ask, from what I understand, you don't make money from leasing because you don't have cars like other companies, you're independent, right? And you also don't make money from selling vehicles either, but how do you charge? And that depends on several factors, I imagine. And what are those factors? Can you explain a little bit, Nick? You're smiling.
Exactly. We are independent from automakers, rental companies, or dealerships, as well as fuel card companies and so on. Our compensation is based on fees for the fleet management service. And the amount, right, varies according to the contracted scope, the size of the fleet, and the complexity of the operation. But at the same time, our model is actually very transparent, and the client knows exactly what they're paying for and the value they're getting in return, because that's something clients really care about, right? If I'm increasing the budget, what am I going to get back? That part is also very transparent, and I think that's one of the advantages of working with a fleet management company of outsourcing fleet management.
It depends on the size of the fleet, right? And other factors too.
Yeah, that's right.
And for you, Osnil? Osnil, is it pretty much the same for you?
Very, very similar, right? I think that to maintain independence, there can't be any kind of compensation agreement with the supplier, right? So we really work, the word independence really comes from that, right? You work on behalf of the client, always doing what's best for the client. And in this case, right, the compensation is calculated based on the size of the fleet, obviously, or some specific condition, a special request from a client, like a representative, or managing a pool of vehicles, then you have to analyze it, right? Fleets are very variable, so basically, it's a monthly management fee per vehicle. That can range from a full service, where you include the entire range of end-to-end services, or it can be customized, adapted to a specific need.
I'm going to continue with Osnil. So how do you reduce the TCO, the famous TCO, the total cost of ownership, right? Is it by lowering maintenance and operating costs, or maybe by improving the vehicle utilization rate, avoiding unnecessary upgrades or fleet expansion? Or is there another way? What do you think?
The calculation of TCO, it varies a bit, depending on whether it's an owned fleet or a leased fleet, right? So, when it comes to reducing TCO, when you're preparing the analysis, you take into account some variables like fuel consumption, maintenance expenses, insurance, right? But, yeah, in some markets, the services are more separated, so you can manage things a bit better. In Brazil, things are still developing, not just in Brazil, I think in general in some countries, except maybe Mexico, where it's a bit more common to separate the vehicles, the costs, of the services involved in leasing. But I would say that, of course, there's this TCO study that can help with the decision, but really, the best result comes from negotiation. In our case, when you request quotes from the rental companies for a specific vehicle, right? You put them all into an online auction. And this auction, which is a reverse auction, is where the rental companies, the suppliers, really compete to give you their best offer. And that's where we achieve the most significant reduction in our project. So it's a flagship. It's something very important for us, and of course, it's directly related to TCO reduction.
Okay, Nick, considering suppliers like automakers and maybe gas stations, repair shops, or the mechanics, right? And what KPIs should clients be looking at in this regard?
Yeah, definitely. KPIs are essential to ensure performance and cost control. In the case of repair shops, I think Osnil mentioned something really important when working with our own fleet. How can we reduce costs and also meet the KPI that the client is asking for, right? And everything is based on transparency. If you have the right information at the right time, in the right place, speaking of technology, you'll have the ability to make the right decision. The same goes for obtaining and tracking the KPIs that the client is looking for and that Traxall is also pursuing together with the client. If we talk about specific KPIs, I think they include repair time, the amount of time the vehicle stays in the shop, the average cost per service, the average cost per, and the amount of rework, right? Or the number of cases where the car has to come back to the shop to, have the same repair done again, right? For fuel, the average consumption per vehicle, price variation, and deviation by driver are really important. As for automakers, I think delivery time, total cost of ownership, and most importantly, when talking about own fleets, fleet valuation, which is now a big challenge here in Brazil. Both rental companies, clients, and those with their own fleets are really struggling with the drop that's happening in used car values.
I just spoke with Milad. We talked about how important depreciation or devaluation of the car is. It's important.
Yeah, everyone is struggling with that, right? We are continuously and systematically monitoring all these indicators, mainly to support our clients in making decisions. And I think that's it. But again, transparency is the main thing. If we're talking about owned vehicles, the client needs to know how much was paid at the shop and how much was reimbursed at the end of the month to the service provider.
Ah, okay. And Osni, a company like yours offers a customized service instead of following a standard model, as I understand it. So, what do you take into account when defining this personalized approach?
Actually, each project is unique, Right from the first implementation meetings, you'll realize this. I mean, there are several departments involved: purchasing, human resources, compliance. A lot of people are involved, and we in the fleet area end up interacting with all of them. So, you end up designing the workflow for that specific situation, for that particular client, adjusting the process to fit the unique aspects of each one. You keep testing, adjusting, and customizing, so really, there's no way to apply a standard model, and honestly, I don't think there's any standard model that guarantees success. Every company has its own culture, every company has its own story. So, really, all of our clients, each one tells us a different story. It's a learning experience for us every day with each implementation.
And anonic access to technology. Well, I'm learning a lot about technology now, and it's really essential in fleet management too, right? What do you offer your clients in that regard?
Yeah, we invest heavily in technology because it's the foundation of modern management. Just imagine 30 countries, and each country has its own way of doing things. For me, for example, the way we calculate fuel usage is a really good example. Especially why? Because here in Brazil, we measure fuel consumption by the number of kilometers per liter, right? In Europe, it's measured in liters per 100 kilometers. Now imagine putting all that together to create a global level report for some clients where you serve, I don't know, 18, 20, 25 countries. You have to gather all that information. But that's just one part, right, one of Traxxas's internal challenges. If we talk about the technology we offer to a client, I think the most important thing here is an integrated platform, very customized, with alerts, reports, integration with ERP systems, and also with suppliers. What I found very important, and I think is a really advanced aspect of Brazil, is that here we have a huge market, and there are also a lot of very strong players in terms of technology who are selling technology services for fleets. Bringing all of that together into one system is a challenge, but it's also a huge advantage. So, yeah, we're investing a lot in developing APIs both with rental companies and other suppliers, so I can have a platform where the client can get a complete view of their fleet. And that view gives you control and agility in your operations. I think that's the most important thing, right? Yeah, at the same time, it's the human support behind all of this, because the system can't function without the human element. Without people, professionals who will work within the system and develop it together.
Nick, you must have some contracts with companies. You probably have to deal with multinationals that operate in several countries. It must be kind of complicated to work, first of all, in a company that's present in 30 countries, and your two companies have that kind of thing, right? It must be a lot of work to organize all of that.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's really cool when you can look at, like, a map of the world and actually see the depth of each country, each region, each cost center, and even see the expenses at different levels.
I think it's good. Maybe the advantage your company has, if you're operating in several countries, you have that possibility to work with the big companies. Osnil, I'll stick with technology, working with data. So, how can we improve data reporting in fleet management in Brazil? How can we improve the reports? Because sometimes some companies have problems with data.
Yeah, actually, we work as an integrator, right? In other words, we collect a lot of information from various suppliers, integrate it, and present it in a way that we can analyze it, right, and that serves as a basis for decision making. It's a big challenge, right? We keep recommending, we keep looking for an increasingly multi-supplier environment, and that's what's happening, right? I think companies that have only one supplier, like in the past, that's something that's tending to change, right? In other words, an environment that allows for better competition is a multi-supplier environment. And then our challenge just keeps growing, right? So, whether we're talking about Brazil or other countries as well, you have this demand for regional management and you need a report with LATAM expenses, and each country has its own currency, and each country has suppliers who send information in their own way. So, it takes a lot of time, but one advantage we have is having our own system, right? The development is done in-house, so we have a team working on it, and we keep passing information to them, keep talking, they start to understand, and then things keep evolving, right? I think the real cherry on top is being able to implement a system and see your fleet with up-to-date information and a 360-degree view of all the expenses. That way, companies can make strategic decisions, right? That's the direction we're working towards.
Now I'm thinking about risk, so I'll pass it to Nick. What is the most concerning risk factor in fleet management in Brazil? And how can that risk be reduced?
I think that's a really important point. It's safety, for sure. Safety for both the drivers and the assets, the company's property, but especially the safety of the drivers, because you are aware of the statistics, right? And unfortunately, Brazil isn't at the bottom of the list when it comes to the number of accidents, it's at the top. And that's our biggest concern when you talk about accidents, and not just, mainly accidents, but also fraud and poor conditions, right? Because that has a direct impact on costs and also on the company's and the client's image. And the way to mitigate that, I think, is mainly with well-defined policies and also by incorporating technology into the process. There are a lot of really cool things happening now, not just around the world, but also in Brazil, with some really strong companies offering very advanced technologies, but also working directly with drivers, with safe driving programs and so on, right?
That ties in with education too, doesn't it? You have to educate all the drivers and operators.
Absolutely. It always goes hand in hand. Technology, but also, the driver's behavior. And that depends a lot on the client, their profile, and how the client is using the corporate fleet. It varies, but either way, that's the main part.
There's something different here, or since I'm from the United States, here you have armored cars for people who aren't. Over there, it's just for celebrities or maybe governors, higher up people. But here, I think you both probably work, if needed. For your clients, you work with armored cars, which they have here in Brazil, right? Speaking of cars, I have another question here. We only have time for one more question. I already asked Milad, so I'll start asking these questions in 2025 because I'm curious to see. So for both of you, if you were a car, which one would you be? Okay. A compact, economical one, or maybe a luxury sedan, something fancy, okay? Maybe. Or maybe an SUV, for multi-purpose use, or a pickup truck, maybe. Maybe you're a pickup, I don't know. Or a sports car, a sporty car. Or maybe something else. Let's start with Osnil.
For me, I'll go straight to the point, an SUV. For the comfort, versatility, I'm tall. It's the kind of car that really works for me. I'd like a compact car for the fuel efficiency, but I'm way too tall for a compact car, so I'll stick with the comfort of my SUV.
Millet, who just spoke, he's a big guy, he's tall too, so yeah. So it's an SUV, right? Really versatile, you can use it for all sorts of things, and there's plenty of space for stuff, for lots of trips, so yeah, that works. And you, Nick?
Look, I'd like to say we're a beetle, right? Because that's so Brazilian.
Busca, vai busca.
But I think we're actually pretty close to Osner too, because I think an SUV fits, right? If we're talking about the image, right? The versatility, we're more similar, because an SUV can handle different types of terrain, but at the same time it's really comfortable, smart, and very safe. I think this vehicle meets a lot of needs. In that sense, I agree with Osner that there are customers who seem similar to others, but there's no customer exactly like another, right? Each one has their own way. The fleet is really different.
But a real SUV. Some SUVs are small. They look like a boxy car, but I want my real SUV.
But you didn't specify which one, so.
That's true, indeed.
There are pickups too, but SUVs are more comfortable, I think so. Very good. So, I don't have any more questions. This is the end of the program for today. And yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to you both, to Osnil and also Nick, for sharing information about what's been happening in the market here in Brazil. And see you next time, okay?
Thank you.
See you later. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you all as well for watching. Bye-bye.
Fleet Mobility Today.